Well, good morning, everyone. If I can have your attention, we'll get the program started this morning. And if you haven't figured it out, the restrooms are out that back door and to the right, just in case you needed that information. Well, good morning. My name is Craig McFarland. I'm the president and CEO of Pinal Partnership, and I'd like to welcome everybody here and thank you all for being and participating with us today. This is our third breakfast this year, and we have decided that we're going to put the breakfast on the first Friday. So if you want to just put that on your calendar, it's always going to be the first Friday of each month, other than the month of July. We go dark in July, but that way you can kind of plan for it, and hopefully we'll continue to see this amount of participation. We really appreciate everybody's for being here. Today we're going to be talking about water, and I thought it was very appropriate that it rained today. So we should have this meeting more often. So next month it's going to be on water again. So I'm just putting it out there so that the rain gods will hear us and maybe let it rain again. So again, welcome to the Elements Event Center here in the Ak-Chin community. And I want to give a big thank you to our new and renewing members, corporate sponsors, Southwest Power, Arizona Water. Thank you both. And thank you to all of our corporate sponsors. Associate sponsors, NextEra Energy, Logan Simpson, Stantec, Olson. Yay. Was that you, Rebecca? Of course. Individuals, Carrie Sparks, Kenneth and Hayden Raycraft, Kyle Root, and then nonprofits, the Boys and Girls Club of the Sun Quarter is new, government, the town of Florence, and the town of Marana. So thank you all for renewing and becoming new sponsors. So I did say that it's the first Friday, but the next event is going to be on April 4th, so if you want to mark your calendar. We have not determined where yet, but we'll get that out to you soon. So let me welcome our panelists this morning. We're going to be talking about water, and their bios are on your table. This is a pretty distinguished group of water experts. First, Patrick Dent, and as I call your name, if you could come to the stage, I'd appreciate it. Patrick Dent from Central Arizona Projects. He's the Assistant General Manager. Patrick. Doug Dunham is the geomorphologist, and I had to look that up to figure out what a geomorphologist is. And I'll let Doug explain maybe further. From EPCOR. Doug? And then Jake Lenderking, whom I've worked with extensively. Actually, I've worked with all these guys. Senior Vice President of Water Resources and Legislative Affairs, which is a big job from Global Water. Jake? And last but not least, Terri Sue Rossi. She's the Vice President of Water Resources for Arizona Water. And Terri Sue, I did get your text, but it was too late to give you advice how to get here. So my bad. Oh, so he responded? All right, okay, good. Will this come out? All right. Well, thank you all for being here. And water obviously being a big topic of conversation these days, especially at the legislature and in Pinal County and the Pinal AMA. A lot of things going on. And so I'll just start with you, Patrick, and we'll kind of work across the table. Tell us kind of what's going on with EPCOR. Like what are you doing for? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Dunham. Doug, sorry. We'll start with Doug.
Okay.
And let us know, what you're working on in terms of the future water supplies. What are the things you're worrying about and working on today?
Well,
with EPCOR.
with EPCOR. So first I want to start off with when I was with the Department of Water Resources, every time I had to go out and talk about drought, it would rain. So I think maybe weekly I should just kind of
You do that more often,
continue.
for sure.
Yeah, okay. So what we have been working on with EPCOR is looking at kind of the all the above strategy on water supplies. Probably the biggest project on my plate right now is going through the alternate designation process that was just passed by the Department of Water Resources new rule package.
And what is the alternate?
So what the ADAS for short does is it allows a water provider to become designated and phase in all of the responsibilities that entails. So there's been historically a barrier to smaller water providers and smaller cities that aren't designated, because once you become designated, every single drop of water you serve, you have to make sure that it's called consistent with the goal of the AMA, all right? And what that means is every drop of water, groundwater you use, you have to put back in. And under the certificate process, you've got holes in that system. There are entities you serve that are not under a certificate of assured water supply. And so when you take on that responsibility, you take on a whole bunch of new replenishment that you have to do. And that's a very big lift for a water provider if you haven't been doing it from day one. And so what the ADAS does then is it allows you to slowly convert those areas that you haven't been recharging for to begin to do that. And so the other advantage of becoming designated is that you're able to have a lot more flexibility in your water supplies. So the certificate by certificate process, those supplies are tied to that one specific subdivision. When you get designated, you can move all of your renewable supplies around, and it gives you a lot more ability to make very efficient use of every drop of renewable water that you have. So that's the biggest thing.
And it also accounts for all the water, whether it's an industry or whether it's an apartment complex, right?
That is true, and that's a big benefit to the aquifer, because if you have industries, individual users coming in, those don't always get accounted for under the assured supply, and then that's drain on your aquifer in the long term.
Thank you. Patrick? Sorry, I should have started with you. Why'd you hand it to him?
Because I guess I was happy to opine on EPCOR.
Be nice.
I think
Patrick with EPCOR.
I
Oh,
think
no, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
the stocks outlook
CAP.
is good. I don't know.
Tell us about
Anyway,
CAP
good
in
morning.
5 minutes or less,
I will.
because I know the CAP. That's a huge topic.
I see you're concerned about my brevity, so I'll do my best. So.
Well, you're not. Mitch isn't up here, so we're okay.
He can be.
Sorry,
He's
sorry,
just
Mitch.
right there. So I'll get going. So good morning. My name is Patrick Dent, Assistant General Manager of the Central Arizona Project. Really focused on water policy issues with the CAP. Responsible for Colorado River, the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District, and planning and analysis efforts, which include recovery of CAP water stored on behalf of the Arizona Water Bank over the last couple of decades. I would say our big issues now are focused on the Colorado River. Hopefully I'll get to talk a little bit more on that in our panel right now, but at a high level, the discussions on the Colorado River are about a new set of guidelines for operating Lake Powell and Lake Mead. Those guidelines need to be implemented by the Bureau of Reclamation before really July of 2026 gets here. That process has been going on for a number of years now, and does reflect a fairly complex negotiation between water users across the Colorado River Basin. So we work closely with the Arizona Department of Resources. Tom Bushotsky is the director, who is the governor's representative for Arizona in those negotiations. And we partner closely with the department on providing policy, technical, and legal analysis to look at Arizona's Colorado River supplies. And then the other, I presume we'll go there today, but also we are engaged in groundwater replenishment. The CAGRD is an important component of home building within Arizona, both within designated water service providers and outside of them as well. Lots of changes in groundwater in Arizona. Lots of discussions, both at the department and at the legislature, and I have a few thoughts on that as we discuss on our panel today. So, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Terri Sue, how about Arizona Water Company?
Thank you. So Arizona Water Company has a pretty simple water resource strategy. It's twofold. One is to develop a diverse water supply portfolio, and the other is to use every single water supply we have as efficiently as possible. So if you reduce that down to kind of how we're focusing our efforts, in terms of the diverse water supply, we're in the process, like EPCOR is, of working through the designation of assured water supply process through the alternative path, and that's a lot of work. And then the other thing we're doing is expanding our integrated demand management program. So in Casa Grande, we have the Save It program. Who is familiar with the Save It program? Who has seen our advertising out there? We really need more people than that to get familiar with the Save It program. We're going to work on that problem. We have, I don't know, probably a dozen integrated demand management programs now throughout the state, and here in Pinal County we actually have 3. So we've got the Save It program, we have the Coolidge program, and then we have the Apache Junction program. So we have 3 different programs, and so those are focusing on conservation and then the designation of assured water supply. And the way that we're sort of managing the diversity of the water supply is through things like fully using our CAP water, and things like working with our communities to get access to the effluent and return that back to the customers who produce it. We're also looking at other water supplies, like, for example, local surface water. We're also looking at long-term storage credits. So we're developing a diverse supply primarily through those methods, and of course we use groundwater as well.
So what is the demand model? What is that? What is your demand model? What is it?
When you say demand model, what?
Well, the model that you're using to help you manage your water.
Well, so we have a number of tools. So we do rely on the department's groundwater model. We also have a water supply and demand water supply and demand system that we're developing, where it's a geospatial environment where we've attached our water use data to different geographies, and we're keeping track of all the assured water supply determinations, so we know exactly where they're at and where they aren't at, and also keeping track of the volume associated with them in terms of actual use and what's on the certificate, and all of that is feeding into the designation of assured water supply. So it's really about being a master over these assured water supply determinations. And by a master, what I mean is mastery of understanding it. That way we can put ourselves in a position of helping the community make the kinds of decisions that it needs to, and helping landowners make the kind of decisions that it needs to, in order for us to move forward in a way that is sustainable and is consistent with wise water management.
Perfect, thank you. Jake, how about Global Water? So to outline, you've got 3 water providers up here, and then the Central Arizona Project, CAP, who's a water delivery system. Oh, actually, they're all water delivery systems, but Colorado River Water versus municipal water delivery. So one also is not a designated provider, and Global is a designated water provider. So there's a difference up here. So you can get kind of a difference of how they operate in their systems, although they all deliver water. So that's the commonality between all these folks. Jake, what Global Water? Sorry.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for the overview.
Editorialized there.
Yeah, it's a good overview, and I like the word mastery. I think that's a good description of what all of us water providers are trying to do. Is like kind of tame the Wild West in water. We're really fortunate that we're just a 21-year-old company. We're founded in a time where it's common knowledge that water is scarce. So we informed our philosophy we call total water management, which we incorporate different aspects of planning and water use, such as using recycled water from day one. We get agreements with the developers right off the bat. We get purple pipe in the ground before the streets are paved, so we can have direct reuse of recycled water. This feeds into getting a designation of assured water supply. We believe that's a really important part of total water management, and like Terri Sue said, mastery. It helps us have that mastery. I really like using that word there. Sorry, I'm borrowing it. Bless you.
Bless you.
And you know, other components of total water management, you know, a designation is very important. We just got one for another water system down south of Tucson. We of course have the one in and around Maricopa. Part of that is smart water meters that allow our customers to receive leak alerts as text messages and other such data points online. We, of course, have really strong conservation programs, and we intend to build on these things into the future. So I hope to get a little bit more of that, what we're doing in the future, a little later in the panel.
Thank you, Jake. So we have CAUS, which is a Certificate of Assured Water Supply. We've got the DAWS, which is a Designation of Assured Water Supply. We have ADAWS, which is the Alternative Designation of Assured Water Supply. We're working on ag to urban. So we'll start with you, Jake. We'll go back the other way. How does all of this work together, and where are we going with it?
That's a great question. So Doug gave a good overview a moment ago. I'll just reemphasize. I think a certificate of assured water supply is obtained by a landowner for a specific parcel of land. A designation is applied for and obtained by a water provider for their entire service area. And the ADAWS is a new development of a designation for the two closed basins, that's Phoenix and Pinal. We have, in some places in Red Rock, just at the southern end of the county, we have a developer who obtains certificates of assured water supply. In and around Maricopa here.
And the certificate's applied to a lot.
That's right, applies to the parcel of land, so it'd be a subdivision of say a section of land. So we have both in our areas. We strive to have designations, and you know, really I think both Terri Sue and Doug are working through the ADAWS process, and I'd probably turn it over to them for more detail on that.
Terri Sue?
So I think the question was, if I remember, how all these things kind of fit together. And the things that you listed do in fact fit together, but it's a complex picture, complex puzzle, if you will. But it's really about a little bit about what you were talking about earlier. It's connecting some dots together that allow a water provider that's currently on a certificate system to be able to transition over to a designation system. And designations are believed to be a better water management strategy, but they are also a better tool for the communities to make decisions about what's going on in their communities. And it's also a way to allocate the resources in a way that makes sense, instead of things getting pasted in a particular location and then held there over time. I think most people understand that in the Pinal AMA, the last certificate of assured water supply was issued like in 2011. So where those certificates existed were sort of frozen in time. And so if you can imagine a life where, 15 years ago, what you had was all you were ever allowed to have, you can kind of get a feel for what the problem is. So by Arizona Water Company entering into this space of a designation, we're going to be thawing out that frozen picture of what our lives look like.
Yeah, and just to elaborate a little bit from a municipality's perspective and living in a CAUS situation, the CAUS, or the Certificates of Assured Water, are to a specific plat. And if it wasn't acquired, like some of these plats were acquired back in 06, 05, 04, and they're still sitting there. They're sitting on a blank piece of land that nobody has developed, and you can't move it. You can't move that water. So now if you're a designated water provider, you can move the water wherever you build the pipe, as long as you don't use up all your water. Correct? Am I kind
Yeah,
of...
and I think one of the challenges that we're seeing with the designation process and this transition, this hybrid, is those subdivisions still have an entitlement. They still have the ability to develop. So we will be preserving water supplies for those subdivisions as we go along. But there's some additional capacity that's built into those certificates. For those of you who are familiar with the process, the demands that were applied for originally were quite high relative to actual demands. So there's some capacity in there that's going to allow us it's going to create some flexibility for us. But not without bringing some renewable water supplies to the table. So it's like what Craig was saying. It's a combination of things. It's the ag to urban. It's the ADOS. It's bringing renewable water supplies to the table. It's demand management. It's a combination of all these things.
So I wish I had the graph, but there's this great graph that somebody at DWR made up at one point that shows the statewide water consumption. And we today, even with our much larger population, we use less water than we did in 1957. So if you think about how much we have grown, we have gotten so much more efficient in our water use that even with the big, huge population expansion, we use way less water. So if you zoom in down to the certificate by certificate process that we've been talking about, our homes, the interior, the landscaping, all of those things that we've done over time to make our water use as efficient as possible, there's a huge savings. And so if you have a certificate that was issued back in 2000, the demands associated with that are much higher than what they are actually today. And we see in our systems that the certificate's issuance, that water that's locked up to a certificate, is at least 1/3 larger than what the demands actually exhibit on the ground.
And that demand is actually in ADWR's model, right?
That's right.
And it's not been taken out. It's
Right,
still
so
in
all of
there.
that extra water that's not actually being used in all of the department's modeling, because that certificate could go live at any moment, that subdivision can be built because it's approved. That water's held for them. But they don't, the actual demands are much, much less. And there's no process under the certificate process to say that's actually reserved way more than is needed for that subdivision. Under the designation, because it's serving everybody and you can move, that water becomes fungible. You're still responsible for serving that approved subdivision. That plat's there, you get to serve it. But you know, as a designated provider, that that demand is much less. So that allows you a lot greater flexibility to move water around. Same thing with your other supplies. If you've got effluent, most of our systems we have effluent that we can move around. We have other allocations. We have CAP water. We have tribal lease water. We have other surface water that we're able to move within our systems. So in the West Valley, we are pursuing the ADOS. In our Santan system, so we've got two systems there that really seem as one because the way the Department of Water Resources regulates us. We've got a traditional designation for those systems there, and we're going through the process to renew those designations as well. But that, again, is going to require us, because the groundwater is fully spoken for in the two AMAs, we are relying on renewable supply, primarily reclaim, reusing of the effluent. So there's a lot of flexibility built into a designation, allows you to move these supplies around and manage the overall portfolio instead of just piecemeal.
Thank you, Doug. So, Patrick, from a CAP perspective, and your CAGRD is part of you guys, and maybe you can explain to people what CAGRD stands for, since it's another acronym that we have. But how does that fit into all this conversation that we're talking about here?
The CAGRD is the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District, and it has a direct link. The CAGRD was created in the mid-90s and is essentially a companion to both the certificates of assured water supply, the CAWS, and can be a partnership with designated providers as well. And the objective is about managing groundwater sustainably. So if you have a subdivision and you have a certificate, the department has determined that there's water there available to serve those properties. It's pumped and delivered to residents, but it then becomes the responsibility of the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District to acquire a water supply and replace that water back in the aquifer. That's kind of a simplified explanation. There's a lot more to determining how much and costs and those kinds of things. One thing I would note, though, at the moment, just in terms of water supply availability, in the 90s, when that responsibility was given to the Central Arizona Project, it's because there was abundant Colorado River water. In fact, we called it excess CAP water. And it was anticipated at that time that the groundwater replenishment function would come for decades from excess CAP water, which CAP had. They had the CAP had the groundwater recharge facilities and other partnerships, and they would take this excess water and put it back in the aquifer to support the groundwater use associated with those certificates. Every 10 years, the CAGRD is required to do a plan of operations, and those fall on the mid-decade, whatever, 1995, 2005. In fact, I think Terri, Sue, and I worked on the 2005 plan of operations, 2015, and of course, 2025. And it's been, frankly, a different outlook in every decade that has passed in the version of those plans. I'd just make a quick comment about the 2015 plan. In 2015, we had started to see likely coming reductions on Colorado River supplies. We also saw, frankly, quite a much more rapid increase in CAP water use by those who had CAP contracts. And so the excess water that I talked about was becoming obvious it wouldn't be broadly available for the CAGRD. And so over the last 10 years, the CAGRD has been out acquiring other water supplies, many of which were CAP water supplies through some of the mechanisms that Doug mentioned that EPCOR has been using, effluent, NIA, which is a lower priority CAP contract, tribal leases. NIA, non-Indian agriculture water, which is a priority of CAP
I'm going to call you all
water.
out on using acronyms too much.
I'm going to avoid using one the rest of the panel, which will be challenging. Yeah. But that was the challenge 10 years ago, was acquiring these water supplies. In the 2025 plan, I would just say it's even tighter. The non-Indian agriculture priority water that I mentioned, the department is saying to us that is currently a big part of the CAGRD's portfolio. The outlook of the availability of that water based on our Colorado River discussions is that broadly won't be available. And so we'll be looking at almost the same question again for the next 10 years. Where will the water come from to meet these replenishment obligations?
Great, thank you, Patrick. Water can get really complicated, and so we were trying not to dig down into the weeds on this, but while I have you, Patrick, can you maybe give our group here a little update on the Colorado River?
Yeah, happy to.
In 5 minutes or less.
The email said 50 words, which I don't know that I can do, and I don't mind starting with Colorado River negotiations. Really do consume my life at the moment. My small team works closely with the Department of Water Resources, as I mentioned in my opening remarks. The new guidelines are fairly simple to explain. The Bureau of Reclamation operates Lake Mead and Lake Powell. Our Colorado River water here in the lower basin comes from Lake Mead. You're either Nevada pumping it out of the lake, or you're diverting it from the lower river if you're in Arizona or California. Reclamation, in managing the storage in both of those reservoirs, needs to know how much water to let out of them. So for Lake Powell, they're developing rules that will guide how much water to let out of Lake Powell. That essentially determines how much water is coming into Lake Mead and how much is available for the lower basin to use. Likewise with Lake Mead, it's about how do we manage the storage that's in there and how do we adjust the releases, usually downward if necessary, to protect those lakes from going dry. Reduces from Lake Mead directly correlate to reductions in water use among lower basin water users. I think our key objectives in Arizona are getting cooperation across the basin to share those reductions. Cooperation from California, cooperation from the upper basin. We're not going to lean on Nevada too much because there's Las Vegas and it's their only water supply and it's kind of small, but really from California and the upper basin. We've had good partnerships with the lower basin. About a year ago, in fact, a year ago yesterday, the lower division states put out a plan. It had some level of a tentative agreement with California about how water use reductions
And Patrick,
would be
who is the
shared.
lower basin?
Lower basin are the states of Arizona, California, and Nevada. The upper basin are the states of New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. And then, of course, the nation of Mexico is a water user as well. And sometimes we consider Mexico the eighth state. I don't think they care for that, but we do sometimes lump their water availability in with the water availability with the lower basin because they take their water deliveries out of Lake Mead. Over a year now, we had shared our plan with them going back to October of 2023. We felt it was an excellent framework for both how to operate the system and how to share the reductions that may be coming under the driest hydrologic scenarios that reclamation has said need to be considered for the next 20 to 30 years. The upper division states have essentially refused to take on mandatory reductions. And their reasons are maybe more than I want to go into right now, but we certainly disagree with that notion. We feel that there's going to be less water broadly available in the basin, and all water users need to find a way to trim their use. And Arizona has been leading that. They've been doing that for 10 years. In our lower basin agreement, frankly, they've put a fairly substantive amount of water on the table. And how we pull that together will be challenging within our state.
And Arizona's taken the biggest cuts.
Absolutely. Arizona has taken the biggest cuts to date.
Pinal County actually has taken the biggest
Pinal
cuts.
County is the poster child for where many of those have fallen, and it's been difficult. We're now looking at a future CEP supply. You know, ideally, Arizona has 2.8 million acre feet of main stem Colorado River water. Higher and same priority water users as CAP on the Colorado River use about 1.1 million acre feet. It leaves about 1.7 million acre feet for the Central Arizona project. We're down to about 900,000 with current conservation agreements and mandatory cuts. I think that'll be about the level we'll start at in the post-2026 framework. So much less CAP water available than what was considered to be available in the 80s and 90s.
Great, thank you, Patrick. I know that's a very complicated project, negotiations that are going on currently with the upper and lower basin states. So thanks for everything you guys do.
Thank you.
Hey, Doug. So tell me, let's kind of look to the future, and so I'm going to ask the three here. So what are you guys doing? What is each of your companies doing to assure your future water supply and water demands that we know are coming because of the growth in the state of Arizona, especially in the county of Pinal?
Sure. Before I get to that, I just want to commend Patrick, your team, Tom Bishotsky, Department of Water Resources, doing a Herculean effort, I think, I know, on those negotiations. Very complex. You have a negotiating partner in the upper basin. I can wax poetically a little more than you probably right at the moment because you got to deal with them. They're very stubborn, I guess is the best way to put it. They really haven't done anything other than say Arizona has to take all the cuts. The plan that you guys came up with, very comprehensive, very, very creative, and good luck to you guys, because we all need your help.
And these are all graduates of the Arizona Department of Water, too, by the way, just FYI.
So,
I'm not Jake, but. Oh, you were really
Yes,
all
yeah,
four of you?
Jake. Yeah.
Oh, Patrick didn't.
Patrick's-
Okay,
Patrick's the
well,
odd
he's
man out.
closely associated with them anyway.
So what we're doing to looking to the future is the so what we're doing is we're stepping back and taking a comprehensive look at all of our water supplies. And so where we do have CAP allocations, what's the best way to move that around? What's the best way to make maximum use of that? Where do we produce effluent? Where our reclaimed water, if we don't directly serve that water to a user, you know, a golf course, landscaping, something like that, we store underground every single drop. Every drop that we can't directly use of our CAP allocations, we also store that underground. We're looking at ways to maximize our other surface water allocations. Again, to make sure that no drop goes unused inappropriately. We're storing as much as we can for future use. We are looking at other alternate water supplies, ramping up our conservation programs. So we're being as creative as we can to be able to move water from where it's at to where it's needed, and anticipating those growth areas and where that demand will be starting to manifest itself as we look, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years out into the future. The other thing that I think Patrick touched on is we cooperate, work very closely with the Arizona Water Banking Authority, and that's another entity that's within the Arizona Department of Water Resources. Terri Sue actually worked there for and can get into more details, but what they have done over the last 20, 30 years is when we do have that excess CAP water, that they have been storing that underground for all CAP water users across the state, and in times of shortage, all of that extra storage is there to help mitigate those drought impacts. So there's a lot of layers of planning that have gone into this stuff. Arizona knows that we are in a desert, and we have the lower priority on the Colorado, and we have been preparing for that. It's not going to be easy, but Patrick, Terri Sue, Jake, people like us worry about this 24/7 all the time. And although I'd love to have a bunch more rain, we can't always rely on that. So there's a lot of comprehensive planning and storage and a lot of creative thinking that goes into this to ensure that average folks in the morning and get up, make their coffee, take their shower, and they don't have to think about it.
Terri Sue, Arizona Water.
So I think that we have a similar strategy to what Doug described. So we're looking at all the assets that we have. We're leveraging things as much as we possibly can, coming up with more creative ways of using the water supplies that we have, and we're looking for some new water supplies. And the one that I wanted to just bring up, which actually all four of us are involved in, is the expansion of Bartlett Dam. And the new water supply that we hope to be created behind there would be holding back new Verde space, or new Verde water that today is not captured, and it's lost and is never used. And so that's a big project. Doug and I are on the steering committee. Well, my boss is on the steering committee. And so Arizona Water Company and EPCOR are both in the steering committee, and then Global is involved relative to PICWA, and so it's hoping to get an allocation as well. And I believe CAP is also, the GRD is requesting an allocation as well. And so the beauty of that project is that if you go out on the open market right now to buy a water supply, you're going to pay probably upwards of $50,000, $60,000 an acre foot, maybe even more. The beauty of the Bartlett Dam project is that it's a construction project, and so it's creating capacity, it's capturing water, it will capture water behind that dam, and you're paying the price of the construction. You're not buying the water on the open market. So you have a little more control over that. It also is a supply that's going to go on forever. So if you buy a spot market supply today, you're buying long-term storage credits. That's a volume of water. You divide it by 100. That's your water supply. And at the end of the 100 years, that supply is gone. A project like the New Verde Space Water is not that. It's a forever project like the CAP. So we feel that's a really important part of the picture. Another thing that we feel is a really important part of the picture is really starting to, and I'll use the word master again, how to conjunctively use all the water supplies that we have. So our objective is to be able to provide a sustainable water supply to our customers. By that we mean that under any operating conditions, under any hydrologic conditions, we have a diverse enough water supply portfolio that we can meet the demands of our customers. And then, of course, it goes without saying that demand management is a part of that whole picture.
Thank you, Terri Sue. Jake?
So very similar strategy as the other utilities here. I think we're all cut from the same cloth at DWR. But I want to say I'm thinking about it in 3 different ways, and that's refining and working on our total water management strategy, continuing to evolve our conservation programs. I think conservation is always going to be a big part, or demand management, a big part of our future water supplies. Part of that's working with the community, whether it's going to be in future rebate programs for turf or new design standards. We're working on both right now. One of the things that dovetails into is the other leg is recycled water. We are using a lot of recycled water throughout Maricopa, but we have excess in the winter and shoulder months, and we're working towards recharging that. We have a really fortunate place in
The recycled comes back from the homes, right?
That's right.
Through your
That's right.
wastewater
It
treatment
comes
plant.
from our water reclamation facility, and we like the term recycled water. I think it bodes well with our customers and the community at large. So that recycled water comes back. It's treated Class A plus, and we're sending it back out to our communities through that purple pipe into HOAs and common area spaces. It provides a really nice quality of life, really good for developments, really good for families. But we do have the excess. So we're partnering with the City of Maricopa and a grant from the Army Corps of Engineers on an $8 million recharge facility right in the middle of Maricopa. We're really blessed with high water levels, but we want to keep it that way. So we're working on this recharge project as well as siting an additional recharge project a little further to the east. So those are recycle water recharge components, but part of that is also making sure that we continue to grow our excess recycled water. So kind of going back to that total water management, working with our customers, how do we set a standard that we can still use a lot of recycled water in the community, but make sure we always have enough to recharge? So we've been working with our community partners to actually have their overall recycled water total demand, their peak day demand, be below their average, the average part that they give back in wastewater. So we're trying to just really fine-tune that model, if you will, and it's working out really well. We've had some really good discussions with developers, and again, it's going to partner up well with the siting and new recharge facilities. So those are the first 2 legs: that total water management, refining it, recycled water use, and recharge. And lastly, it's additional water supplies. I think the New Verde supplies are going to be great. The Verde rivers historically had a lot of water flowing down, underutilized, and I think it's a great place where a lot of Arizonans can come together and partner on it. So far, it's been a really strong partnership, I think, versus other water supplies and other water wars, if you will. It does have its its discussions and infighting and whatnot. I'm really fortunate that we're a member of PICWA, and we're partnering with the City of Maricopa.
PICWA is what?
Oh, you're not going to let me get away with an acronym? PICWA is
I'm the acronym police.
I'm going to make a whole sentence of acronyms in a second. PICWA is the Pinal County Water Augmentation Authority. It's set up in state statute, and its sole purpose is to help out water in Pinal County. And so PICWA is working hard on the Bartlett Dam water supplies, and us and the City of Maricopa are partnering together about how we can bring those supplies to our community in and around Maricopa. So I'm fortunate that I don't get to take all the bullets that these guys do in all the meetings, but but I think the water supply will come to Pinal, and it'll come to Pinal in abundance, and I'm really happy about that one.
And just a final comment on the future of water in Pinal County and in Arizona in general. Do we have water for the future? Do we have a future? Without water, we don't have a future.
I'm happy to go first on that. Absolutely. I think there are some real challenges, and
And this was not a question that they knew was coming.
no, but I appreciated the discussion that we were having here, and it gave me a few moments to formulate a couple of thoughts that I think would be helpful to share. And I am not, CAP is a wholesale water provider. We're not delivering water directly to ratepayers, and so I'm going to talk about cost to ratepayers with these folks might have some blowback on that, but I don't have that fear. So I just want us to maybe take a step back and think about a little bit about our water history and some of the cost components that have affected us over time. And I'll maybe start with the CAP story. CAP was a very expensive project. Our founding water buffaloes worked hard to, and ultimately sought federal funding from the Bureau of Reclamation for construction, and it was up to CAP and Arizonans to repay that over time. In the end, it was about a $5 billion project. I think the newest estimates for Bartlett are over $3 billion. And so I just want to make a bit of a statement about cost. We've found ways to take on the expenses of new water supplies in the past, and those have been challenging. But I think that's something that we need to think about going forward. And I'll do a little simple math on desal, which is going to be with complete hazard because there's not a specific project that I'm talking about, but we are at the Central Arizona Project partnering or interested in partnering with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California on a regional recycled plant that might be a potential augmentation supply for Arizona. There might be other desal supplies that would be available. Those are thousands of dollars an acre foot, which are orders of magnitude than CAP water, which is hundreds of dollars an acre foot, which is an order of magnitude greater than groundwater, which was tens of dollars an acre foot. And I think in some ways it might just be helpful in terms of our future to get our heads around another order of magnitude for our newest water supplies. And I personally think that's a manageable thing. It might be difficult with ag economics. It always has been when an order of water of magnitude comes along. But if I think about homes within the GRD, with the water efficiency type things that Doug was talking about, we're down to about a third of an acre foot a year. They're paying their water bills now. If that third of an acre foot is $1,000 to $1,500, that's $100 to $200 more a month than maybe you're paying for water now. I believe, while I don't want to comment on anybody's personal finances, I believe that's a doable thing that we should be thinking about. And so in the face of obvious desires for economic growth and the things that we want to do here, I think there's ways to meet those challenges. We just need to use some of the same tools and thinking that we've used in the past about how we take on the new and next expensive water supply.
Thank you, Patrick. Well said. Doug?
So what was the question?
Is there any hope?
Is there any hope?
Is there any hope for our future in water?
Or we'll just look like Dune, right?
Yes. We turn into sand.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very hopeful. Arizona has a bright future because of all the historical work that has happened. You think about kind of the bookends of big Western water projects. Started off really one of the very first projects was Salt River Project. The last big one was CAP. So we have done lots of comprehensive planning, looking forward, building resilient water supplies. We are blessed with very robust groundwater supplies. and the geomorphic luck to be able to have aquifers that are resilient in that we can store lots of water underground. And so like a surface water reservoir, when you get the runoff, when you get the rain, when you have those supplies, not only can you store it in lakes, but you can put it underground, and it's there for when times of shortage happen. And that's sort of the big master plan, is when you got it, grab it, store it, and when it's short, then it's there for you. It's your savings account. And so as we look forward, even though costs are going to go up, the next buckets of water are going to be more expensive. If you take the cost of per gallon of what current desal can do, and you look at what the cost is for a provider like us to produce surface water and clean it so it's deliverable to your tap, it's pennies different. It's more expensive, but it's not that much. And it's all within what we can do. And those costs are continually going down. The technology is getting better and better. So with looking at alternate supplies, are we bringing in more water from the Colorado that isn't currently entitled? Do we trade more with other states that bring more in and make use of the excess capacity of the CAP? There are other groundwater basins that in the state that are limited in number, but there's other supplies we can use for bridges. So all of that together, you stack all of those options up, we're not up against the wall. Despite some of the media portrayals, the closedness of the two basins of the Phoenix AMA, Pinal AMA, there is still water. The modeling does not show the aquifer going dry. There is the regulatory limit set by the Assured Water Supply Program, and there's lots of water below that. And there is no place in the modeling that DWR has done in those basins that show mass dryness. So from a regulatory standpoint, the program does what it is supposed to do. It says, oh, we're going to limit the amount of groundwater we're going to use, save most of it for future use in times of shortage, and we've hit that. So the easy groundwater dependent is done, and we've got options.
We've hit that in 100 years.
And that's
not like tomorrow.
That is not happening tomorrow. That is a 100-year projection. So it is 100 years from now. It shows, and there's one thing we know: the model's wrong, but that's our best tool, and the program has worked. And so now we're looking at, okay, there are other alternate supplies that we need to start relying on, and that's fine. That's what we've planned for, and we're going to be able to make that transition.
All right, thank you, Doug. Now that Doug and Patrick have taken up all your time, you have to do it in 1 minute or less.
Yeah, I feel like this is the McLaughlin group, and it's the last 30 seconds. And so the answer to the question is that, yes, we have a future. It is not time to, pack away your Rivian truck tent and drive off. We're not there at all. So invest in your community, invest in your projects, build your projects. Do not be afraid. This is Arizona. We've always lived in a desert. And if the CAP supply is reduced, guess what? We've got a huge canal there that was just waiting for some water supply to come down through. So if we cannot figure this out, given the resources and the assets we have as a state, we all don't even deserve to live here. This is an amazing state with amazing resources, and we have done a phenomenal job of providing water to our community so that we don't have, for example, to shut off our water every other day for landscaping. So have a lot of hope, have a lot of aspiration, have a lot of investment and commitment to this state and to Pinal County. There are amazing things going on down in here in Pinal County. And all you need to do is show up and do your part.
Perfect. Thank you, Terri Sue. I like that optimism. That's great. Jake, last word.
Are we running out of water? That's the question?
Yeah.
Or should we pack up?
Yeah, should we pack it up? I think Terri Sue said no, so.
I'm going to second that or put forth on
Forth
that. Yeah, I want to emphasize Doug's point about the groundwater basins in the model. I think that the DWR did exactly what it's supposed to do. The model showed that the depth of water is going to go in Pinal, 1,100 feet below land surface. In and around Eloy, the depth of bedrock is 9,000 feet below land surface. In and around Maricopa is 3,000 feet below land surface. There is a tremendous amount of water beyond the scope of the model, although it's the regulatory framework and it's doing what it's supposed to do. You know, and so we're going to have water. But I think when we get into the other nuances, how we work together, how we work on the Colorado River, I think there's no state better positioned than Arizona. The institutional, informational, intellectual framework, or what I used to call institutional infrastructure in Arizona is so strong. We are so sophisticated when it comes to water, and we've been solving it forever. We are not like the Midwest where we have water outages regularly, or the Northeast where they had a day that hit 100 degrees and they ran out of water. We hit 100 every summer, and we always have water, and we're always planning for it. So,
Perfect,
go.
thank you. Let's thank our panelists, please. So we've got a couple minutes for questions. If anybody has a question, I know Supervisor Miller, I don't know if he had a question or he's got a comment, but I know he cornered me earlier today. So, Steve?
Thank you, Craig. Well, we'll try and phrase this in a question. It's probably more of a, where do we go from here, everybody? Because we didn't really address the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is the state legislature and the Home Builders Association have attacked Pinal County and do not want legislation that will create the path for development in the future here. So it's very obvious that it's been intentional. I think, Jake, thank you for bringing up the Bartlett Dam. We had a real simple bill that was going to be sponsored by T.J. Shope. He shoved it off into some committee and never heard it and died. And it's totally unacceptable. It was one of those steps that was going to help us move forward with the Bartlett Dam project. The Ag to Urban will not pass. That bill 2573, Spencer Camps was successful in getting an amendment put on it as a poison pill and will not be signed by the governor as is. And we really need to approach the legislature. All of these things are possible. I really appreciate the future of Pinal County, but that future will not go forward without help from the legislature. And I think that you're either, if you're in the Home Builders Association and Pinal Partners, you'll have to decide which one is more important. Because without legislation, we will not be able to move forward with everything that you guys talked about. These are all friends of mine. These are all people I know very well and understand my frustrations. So do you have any suggestions how we go to the legislature? And Patrick needs to be congratulated for 25 years with CAP. He's done a fantastic job. He is a star.
Anybody want to take that one?
This, right?
Yeah. I was afraid of that. There's a ringer in the audience there. Thanks, Steve.
And his name is Steve Miller.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so what Supervisor Miller is talking about is a very simple concept that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. So of course it gets gummed up at the legislature. Agricultural water use on a per acre basis uses much more water than an acre of housing. And so the very simple concept is we're saving a bunch of water, a bunch of groundwater use when you convert ag to urban. And so you should calculate that and be able to rely on that groundwater savings as part of the long-term supply for the new subdivision. Really simple. The math is there, it all makes sense. The Department of Water Resources has done calculations, shows that all of the potential acres out there that could be built on, millions of acre feet will be saved. There are certain constituencies at the legislature who want a more direct conversion than some other parties want. And so, I'm trying to be nice here. And so, as Steve mentioned, it's been shoved off to the side and is not moving forward. Now, the Department of Water Resources is working on a rule package that is attempting to do the same thing. Let's hope that at least one of those two can move forward, because it makes sense, it saves water, it helps our aquifer, and it needs to come together. I'll let the rest of my panelists opine if they want on that.
I think you answered it pretty well. So it's 9 o'clock, and I don't want to go past our time limit. I apologize, I didn't leave enough time for audience questions, but let's thank our panelists again, please. And they all get this wonderful hat. Terri Sue, I don't know if you wear a hat, but Doug, thank you. Thank you, Patrick. And just as a reminder, before you leave, we have a board meeting today, so if I can ask all the board members to please go to the back room when we adjourn here. And don't forget to leave your name badges at the front desk. Helps us save money and recycle. And then save the date again. Next breakfast is April 7th of this year. Oh, April. How come it says 7th? All right, so it's a typo. April 4th, whatever the first Friday is in April. So we haven't decided yet. Have we decided a topic? I don't think we've decided. Not yet. We're going to work on that at the board meeting today. So anyway, thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you, Rena, for all your hard work on this. And thank you to our panelists. Thank you, everyone.